All right, we're ready to go. Let me turn this down on.
All right, give me about 45 more seconds so I can get us set up here.
All right, everybody, here we're on Facebook Live. Our show will be starting in a minute. Food deception. Learn about all the important things that will save your life, prevent you from getting sick, learning about all the scary things that are in our food that you don't want to miss out on learning about how to avoid those. All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody. It's going to be a great show.
10 seconds.
Visit us on the web at fivita.com.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an
Hello, here we go, everybody. We're on Facebook Live, food deception. We're going to talk about food.
All right, here we go.
.com.
Welcome to Take Back Your Health. Your hosts are Dr. Sunil Pai and Maureen Sutton, who will explain the shocking truths about healthcare, prescription drugs, food and supplement industries. They will help guide you to take back your power and feel great again. Now, here's Dr. Sunil Pai and Maureen Sutton.
Welcome, everybody. Today is going to be a very, very important show, a show that will prevent you from getting sick. We're going to talk about food deception and the chemicals, preservatives, and the hidden truths that are unspoken in the industry about what you're going to eat in the next meal, probably. So, Maureen, why don't you give a little bit of intro?
Okay, so here's the intro. Did you know that 1 out of 4 Americans contract a foodborne illness in the U.S. every year? 75 million Americans a year get sick from foods bought from the grocery store and restaurants. Many of the common foods you eat cause GI distress, destroy your microbiome, cause leaky gut, trigger inflammatory diseases, fuel cancer growth, and some can even kill you. We'll cover harmful secrets of food, including beef, chicken, pork, fish, dairy, and even health foods like honey and garlic. Don't be fooled by the industry marketing, making you think your food is clean, fresh, and natural. You're going to find out about how the chemical preservatives, fillers, and harmful ingredients are in your foods, and you may not even know it. We'll talk about the unspoken truths about the food and restaurant industry that will make you think about what's in your next meal, and hopefully you will make different choices.
Yes, after today, hopefully everybody makes better choices. What I want to first start off is something very near and dear to us recently. We had a good friend of ours, close friend of Maureen's.
And a yoga student.
And she passed away recently with something called the prion disease. It's more scientifically, it's called bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD, or more commonly, that most people would know, the layperson on the street would know as mad cow disease. Now, we used to think of this thing being rare. They used to say it's 1 in a million, so only about 300 million Americans have this a year. But what we used to think of it, prion is a folding of the proteins that occur when we consume animal products. Particularly, we used to think was only in the brains of the animals and the spinal cord. And so before, in England, remember in the 90s, there was a big mad cow outbreak because they were feeding the cows to other cows, right, all of the parts, and then the people consuming it ended up getting this disease in their brain called prions, and the proteins start folding over, and why it's called bovine spongiform encephalopathy, because it creates actually holes perforating into the brain. People end up dying very quickly of neurological problems. And unfortunately, our friend, within 3.5 weeks, presenting with neurological symptoms, has passed away. And so I wanted to bring up this show because it's near and dear, because, like, how does this happen in America? You know, this is the land of the free, home of the brave. We should be having regulation in food. Why is this happening? And so I did a little bit of research, understanding, like, gosh, I thought we took out the parts of central nervous system and brains in foods. Like, that's not supposed to be there. But now what the recent research has been showing is that this prion disease can be found in all parts of the animal that we consume. It can be found in the ribs, the shoulders, the tenderloins, the round cups of meat. And even more importantly,
even the muscles of the meat.
Yes,
right?
that's what I'm talking about, muscle. So if someone's getting a piece of steak,
All
they
the
can get
parts
this.
we eat.
Now, the other thing is it's also found in the entrails. Now, that's the GI system. And interesting thing is the food industry and the cosmetic industry has lobbied that they wanted to keep the small intestine in your food because they want to put it in, like hot dogs and hamburgers. And more importantly, even the cosmetic industry lobbied because they use this part, not only the brains, the eyes, and the central nervous system and the small intestines and colon, which sounds very disgusting. They use this in part of cosmetics that you put in your face and on your lipstick every day. They actually lobbied like, we want this in, not removed. But the interesting thing is now this prions.
Pretty shocking. That's
very shocking, right?
really
So,
shocking. I had no idea. I'm glad I don't use makeup.
I mean, there's intestines in your makeup right now. So the thing is, this prions, interesting thing is, we thought, again, it was just in the central nervous system that we're cleaning that up in the industry. Now we find out that it can be in any part of the animal protein of the animal, and even scarier, that now they've even done studies where it can even transmit into the fish. So those people, hey, well, I don't eat beef. Well, what about I'm just eating fish? Is because the prions can actually transmit into the fish because the fish are fed, animal proteins. The fish are fed the cow parts, right? So when we talk later on in the show about factory farm fish, which is a big problem, and especially coming from China and other countries in Thailand, and probably in some offshore countries as well around the United States, we have to be careful of what are we feeding, because now you're no longer you are what you eat. You are what you eat is consuming and eating itself.
And then you have chickens who are eating fish meal as well in their diet. So is it transmitting to the chicken?
It's a disaster, because now, it's interesting. When I was in medical school about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I had a pathologist. Pathology is the physician that looks at the slides. They're the ones who diagnose the diseases like prion diseases or Alzheimer's disease and stuff like that. And he was from England, and he actually came up with an idea at that time when it came out. He said, this is going to be the future of when we see neurological diseases like dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's disease, is that he said that it was going to be confused with these other neurological diseases, because we don't diagnose these other diseases except by prion diseases are only kind of diagnosed really at autopsy after the patient dies. And so when we think of how many people have neurological symptoms like acute onset of like dementias and Parkinson's, and now it's growing and growing, although we know it's pro-inflammatory triggers, at that time now recently in the research, it's shown about 200 people from England have died, but about 15,000 of them have it dormant now in their system. So we're now finding out if I extrapolate that data to the United States, it would be about 68,000 to maybe 70,000 Americans that have this condition that's being misinterpreted possibly as a neurological disease, and it's actually a disease that's coming from their food, unfortunately.
Wow. That's pretty scary. And then what about in the U.S.?
So that's what we're talking about in the U.S. So right now we're only extrapolating what's in the data because England is the first country that started to notice this. But we're looking at what can we do? Is the idea is that we really, for more reasons than not, you should be moving towards a whole food plant-based diet. This should be very concerning because now we're looking at dementias, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's diseases exponentially growing in all the populations in America, right? And we used to think it's a disease of aging. Now we're seeing younger and younger generations getting these neurological conditions. Some of this is going to be related directly to infections in foodborne illnesses that are just come into our body dormant. So you can get it from beef now, you can get it from fish now, you can get it from all parts of the animal. The other thing is in bloodborne products. So now the studies are looking at when Americans go to England and they come back, if they can't donate blood at the Red Cross because the prion disease can be transmitted. Also on surgical equipment.
Oh, so you could get it in your transfusion.
You can get it in your transfusion. You can also get it in surgical equipment. It's something that's very...
They don't know that these people have prion disease.
Absolutely. And there's not really a simple common test that can easily be screened. Just like how we didn't know about hepatitis till 30 years later that, oh my God, it was a lot of people in the 80s who just had a blood transfusion now have hepatitis C without having those risky factors.
For a long period of time before it shows up.
It can be dormant for many, many years, up into a decade or more, and then it can activate. What it does, then the proteins start folding on itself, and then every protein starts to have this conformation change, and then basically you can have these problems in the brain. It's very sad because there's no treatment, there is no aspect. So just looking at that from a prion disease perspective, we want to now move to another topic of discussion is eggs. right? Now, eggs are, have the highest amount of cholesterol, as we know, 423 milligrams of cholesterol versus, say, in 2 eggs versus a ounce of salmon, 4 ounces of salmon having, or a 4-ounce piece of steak having about 64. So 7 times more cholesterol. But that's not what we're worried about so much. It's just the cholesterol. We're now worried about, the USDA has regulated the egg board in terms of its advertising. And eggs now, because of truth in advertising, and you can't be misleading according to the government, thankfully, is that you cannot say that eggs are either healthy or nutritious or safe. Okay? Right? So eggs, although they're high in calories, they're high in saturated fat, is that you can't say that it's an important part of a well-balanced, healthy diet. You can't say that it's safe because over 100,000 Americans get salmonella poisoning every year. Okay, the egg board shows its own research that the egg should be boiled and cooked hard, not sunny side up like most people eat, because you can get sick. You can even get bird flu. Okay,
everybody wants to dip their toast in that little
I know, the yolk.
Yellow yolk.
And the eggs, what we now know is the eggs are not safe because they are not eating healthy, they're not nutritious, they're not safe. But men who eat eggs, more than 1 egg every day, have 2 times the risk of prostate cancer. Chicken gives them 4 times the higher risk of that due to the heterocyclic amines. Choline in the eggs also increase the risk of getting prostate cancer and spreading the prostate cancer and having it more lethal, where it actually ends up killing the patients about 70% more. So just in eating an egg every 3 days increased the men's risk of lethal prostate cancer by 81%. Choline also is uptake more in cancer cells than in regular cells. So it creates a toxic metabolite called TMAO, and now TMAO has been shown to trigger inflammatory diseases. So not only heart disease and and stroke is not due to the cholesterol, it's due to this toxic metabolite that is carried within that. So when we come back after the break, we're going to continue on with this discussion because we want to cover eggs, we want to cover beef, we want to cover chicken, we want to cover pork, we want to cover dairy, honey, and garlic. All these things we'll talk about. So again, stay tuned. Pay attention to our sponsors. They allow us to talk openly and provide you information that is life-changing. We'll be right back after this short break.
Clear.
All right, everybody, here we're live on Facebook. Thank you for listening to us. It is a tough topic today because we're talking about food and foodborne illness and a lot of the toxins that are out there, even when patients and people around there are trying to eat more clean and more organic. We're gonna really talk a little bit on the next few segments about all sorts of foods, right? We're going to get into finishing up the eggs. We're going to talk about chicken, pork, beef, dairy, all these things which people think are healthy, and they're trying to get cleaner at the health food store, at the local store, paying a higher premium, and actually finding out that they might be having more concentration of chemicals.
Yeah, we were talking about eggs. Oh, we're about to talk about chicken, so I'll save my thought until we start talking about the chicken.
Sure. And we also want to talk about them. Remind me to talk about the pasture-raised versus cage-free. We just want everything just to be, as much plant-based as possible. Why? Because the industry is always one step ahead of everybody, trying to think and sell them something that it's not. And so we want all the listeners worldwide. I mean, sometimes this might be different where you're actually growing something in your backyard. You're having some eggs or some chicken or something locally from your backyard. That's a different thing. But 97% of American foods right now in the United States is factory farmed. So if someone goes to a big box store, a restaurant, or a fast food restaurant, this is what we're talking about. And now, since those things are worldwide, the same chain, the same distribution companies, then some of this is particularly pertaining to everybody who's listening out there. So why you want to eat healthy is for the rest of the reasons why we're going to talk about it on the show.
And the factory farming, they're not allowed to, no one's allowed to film it or take photographs. I remember when I was a kid, we could take little tours of, the barns and the places. Okay, I'll come back. And the places where we could, see the cows up close, all the farming, but we're not allowed to go in there anymore.
No, it's actually illegal.
Coming back in about 10 seconds.
It's actually illegal to take any kind of photographs of internal inside of any factory farm. So that's the reason. So you should be worried. You should be able to see where your food comes from, right? Food to table.
You are tuned in to Take Back Your Health. To reach our program today, call 1-866-472-5792. That's 1-866-472-5792. or by email to radio@sanjevani.net. That's radio@sanjevani.net. Now, let's return to Take Back Your Health.
Okay, everybody, we're back. We're talking about a serious issue, which is foodborne illness. 1 out of every 4 people will get sick every year. We were just talking about prion disease, and now we're going to be talking about eggs. Again, we wanted to make sure that when people are looking at eggs, they always market this cage-free. What does that mean? Pasture-raised. You really want to be avoiding eggs altogether as much as possible. Try not to eat eggs, number one. But if you do eat eggs, make sure that it is pasture-raised, not cage-free. Cage-free just means that we can still put it in a barn with 100,000 birds. Conventional eggs are actually put in about 5 to 10 in a little crate that's the size of like a filing cabinet, and they break their. You just don't want to know about that, but you should know about it because everybody thinks that eggs are the perfect protein, but they're not. Again, TMAO, cholesterol, pro-inflammatory, no phytonutrients, no fiber. Okay, so now we're going to just jump to another topic called chicken. So chicken is now, everybody's eating chicken because chicken's like supposed to be the healthier meat. There's 9 billion chickens produced a year or processed a year, 23 million a day at 260 per second in the processing. And what is the problem? Because the industry has now pushed regulation to allow even more processing. What that means is more slippage of foodborne illness, which is dangerous for not only the animals' welfare, but also for the people that work in those industries. Now, the most common cause of foodborne illness comes from chicken, not beef, chicken, right? Most restaurants, they say, oh, we've removed antibiotics from chicken, right? But it's organic chicken, Dr. Pai, I'm eating organic chicken. But guess what? They still put in veterinary antibiotics. And that's how they skirt around these rules and regulations, because as long as I'm not writing amoxicillin, but a vet writes the similar drug, just in a different name, under a different license, is still not regulated. So you can still go to a store, get organic, antibiotic-free chicken, and they're still feeding it vet antibiotics.
And it's animals that ingest the highest amount of antibiotics in the U.S.
Absolutely. And so that causes more resistance in patients and people who actually have the antibiotics. So now we see, multi-strain resistant bacteria growing in patients who are getting sick, even from patients who've never really had antibiotics, but they've had multiple ingestions over time of these foods. Now, there's 11 phosphate salts that are allowed to be injected into chicken. Now, this is banned in Europe, but here we allow it. So what are phosphates? Phosphates are food additives that enhance color, moisture absorbance, flavor to reduce the shrinkage of the poultry and the packaging of it. However, it's been shown to cause arterial stiffening within 2 hours of consumption. Okay, so increasing the heart disease within 2 hours. And Campylobacter, which is the bacteria that's the #1 cause of foodborne illness in America, #1 cause, Campylobacter coming from chicken, is highest found in the chicken, its parts, and its juice that comes out from the processing. Phosphates, which now are in all the chicken, 11 different types of phosphate salts are added, even organic chicken. It has actually been shown to increase the growth of Campylobacter by at least a minimum of 30 times. So it increases this risk of foodborne illness because we're trying to make it look better, and it's trying to say it's organic and all these other things. We're trying to make it look plump and colorful, and guess what? It actually grows the bacteria that is deadly that we don't want to have.
And you bring your chicken home, you put it on the counter, even if it's in the styrofoam covered in the plastic, you put it on the counter, and every single place it touches, that bacteria infects.
Yeah, and in fact, I think their studies show that they take swabs out of the average home all over the kitchen and even at the workplace now, and we can test that these bacteria is there, because no one can be perfect. Not even the best restaurant's perfect, because a little bit of spillage, a little bit of droppage, and we wipe it down and all, it's transferred everywhere.
You're just smearing it everywhere.
Right. Chickens have been now genetically altered to have 10 times more fat than they did over 100 years ago. So why is that? Because remember, increasing animal fat is pro-inflammatory, causes all the risk of cardiovascular disease. Chicken is the second highest source of mercury. So aside of fish, which we'll talk later on in the show, remember, why does this chicken have so much mercury? It's because chicken are fed fish parts. Right? So it's getting complicated. So lead is concentrated in bones of chicken. Remember, go back and listen to all my bone broth studies showing heavy metals concentrated in bones of animals. But where does the mercury goes into the fat? So now that we have 10 times more fat in the chicken, fatty chicken now, that's why everybody likes the taste of chicken, it has more mercury. So it's the second most common cause of mercury aside of having the fish. It also has pesticides, herbicides, prescription drugs, antibiotics. So remember, it's the biomagnification is that these animals now are eating other animal proteins, which is outside of their normal diet. It's concentrating those chemicals, those hormones, those toxins. You want to be away from that.
And back to the fat for a moment. A lot of people think that the white meats have less fat. No, they actually have more because they're grown to have more.
Right. So even lean chicken is still 28% calories by fat calories. So, and even fish is, salmon and wild caught, it's 40%. So, even the leanest, the white skin, the white meat, the lean without the skin, it's still 20 to 30%. So it's still very, very high. And when we look at things like even in the animal protein, we're finding out that there's a concentration of even copper that we're finding out that's higher in the animal protein. And copper now has been shown also to increase kind of the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So again, not only from the inflammation, not only from the cholesterol, not only from all the chemicals, now we're looking at other things that are concentrating that we have in our environment in the animal protein. And also higher arsenic levels. And the arsenic levels that are found in chicken is due to the antibiotic that they give. Remember the vet antibiotic that they give? The vet antibiotic is given to actually grow the chicken to be larger.
And it's in their feed as well. Is that right?
Right. So when we get our Nutri-Eval testing, we look at heavy metals. A lot of patients come back with arsenic. They come back with mercury. They're like, Dr. Pai, I don't eat any fish. We're in New Mexico, so not many people may eat as much fish as on the coast, but they eat tons and tons of chicken. So that's where it's coming from. Okay, and there's even retroviruses. Right?
Yeah, I was just listening to Dr. Grieger this morning, actually speaking about the retrovirus in chicken and egg. Also, it's a herpes type virus that causes cancer and also arterial sclerosis, which is very interesting. So, and I just wanted to say, when I try to feed my dog chicken, she comes over to the bowl, she smells it, and she walks away. She turns her nose up. She won't even eat it.
Yeah, we've even changed the bowls. We've even changed different store brands, organic and all. So obviously there's things in the animal protein that even the animal can sense. Remember, 300 million more receptors in their nose to know these things. But this could be very interesting because we won't know. We just throw it on the grill and we cook it up and throw some sauce on it, not knowing that even my dog, who would love chicken, will not eat it sometimes. So they have to look at what is in the food. So let's talk to the second aspect of what people then go from chicken and they go to fish. Isn't fish healthy? No, because there's still no phytonutrients. There's still no fiber. There's little antioxidants. It's very high in mercury. The number one cause of mercury ingestion is coming from fish. Now, it also can carry prion diseases, believe it or not. So again, because now we're feeding the fish the other parts of the cows, which is very, very strange. Okay. Now, a lot of people farm raised. Yeah. So we're all talking about, now remember, 97% of factory farm food or animal protein is farm raised. So farm raised fish means that they grow them in tanks. Okay, this is usually in Thailand and China and other countries, and they actually feed it everything and anything. And that's why they're fished outside the country, because there's no regulation. So they can give them antibiotics because there's so much fish in these tanks, and they actually give it other parts of other animals and other waste of other animals, and even humans are actually being put into this the fish food. So
human waste, you mean, not humans?
Yeah, human waste. Well, we'll talk about hot dogs later. But interesting thing is the heaviest contaminated fish, for example, we see is tilapia. Right? So people are like, oh, I'm getting tilapia. Any of the white generic fishes that you see, fish fingers, fish tacos, fried things that you don't even really know what kind of fish it is, super, super cheap. It is heavily toxic. And the amount of omega-6, remember, it's supposed to be omega-3s, anti-inflammatory. The omega-6s there are actually more inflammatory than in bacon now from farm-raised tilapia.
Yeah, and let's not forget about the plastic. Now, people who consume fish regularly, by the end of the year, they've accumulated 11,000 bits of plastic in there.
So those plastics, remember, have hormone disruptors, right? Because of all the BPA and all these other hormones. So we can also see like these estrogen-like effects and cancer-causing effects. And then wild-caught salmon. I want to talk real quickly because a lot of people buy wild-caught salmon oil soft gels. I want to recommend everybody to go to my website and look at aninflammationnation.com. All this information is going to be there with all the references and studies. But you want to learn about wild-caught salmon oil, because a lot of people say it's wild-caught salmon oil. What we did is we discovered that in how they get wild-caught salmon so cheap is they actually grow it farm-raised. It's grown farm-raised. They add a little bit of astaxanthin, which is a carotenoid from shrimp shells. It turns this fleshy gray flesh to a bright orange, pinkish color. And then they take it with the machine and they drop it in the riverbanks around in Thailand. And then they pick it up about 20 feet later, and it's called wild caught now. So they have the full wild caught label.
Very tricky.
Very, very, very tricky. And so, when you go to the store, say you got some wild caught salmon, a fillet is not very cheap. And that's why most people don't buy wild caught salmon, because it's expensive for them, right? And now people say, well, how many fillets does it take to make a soft gel? Many. How do I fill a 180 soft gel tablet bottle for now $15, which is more expensive than, it's equal to one cost of a fish in the restaurant? It doesn't make sense. How do I get, 50 fish to make the fish oil? It's because it's not real. It's farm raised and it's tricky. Okay?
Yeah, just recently, I guess a bill was passed by the EPA that you can put whatever you want into our streams and rivers. So even if it was wild caught anymore, who knows what's in our streams and rivers? Yeah,
and unfortunately, there's a new change with the labeling laws, since there is none in America, unfortunately, that the GMO salmon was introduced last year into the food supply. So that means you can actually go to a restaurant and order wild-caught salmon, and it's actually a GMO wild-caught salmon. Okay, so everybody's like, oh, I go buy wild-caught. I was like, what does that mean? Since it's not labeled, because there's no labeling law to say that it's not GMO.
Right.
Then they're just charging again, same thing. And unfortunately, this wild-caught GMO salmon has been introduced into the wild. So we don't know the ramifications down the line to all the ecosystem that will be happening. Right. So hopefully everybody understands we should be eating less fish, we should be eating less eggs, we should be eating less chicken. In fact, eating none of it would be best, right? Because these are all not good for our health, no matter what the industries might be telling you. And when we come back after this break, we're going to be talking about milk, we're going to be talking about beef, we're going to be talking about pork, we're going to bring up a lot of other aspects here. Pay attention to our sponsors, and again, start thinking about when you're eating food, you want to be eating more right directly from the farm, right? Fruits and vegetables. You want to be eating a plant-based diet. You want to be eating organic, non-GMO foods. And anything else you want to do is you want to verify. Don't just believe the label, verify. Go ask the store. About 30 to 40% of the studies now, up to 60% of fish that's marketed at the health food store has been mislabeled, even from the fish suppliers to the fish store, right? So people think I'm going to the health food store and paying more. They're actually not even getting that, because most people now, 60% of the fish that's bought in a health food market is not even labeled correctly.
Right. And now the recent owner of one of our largest favorite health foods that carries fish and other items said GMO is good. They were supposed to be labeling things by 2020, but he says no.
Here we go. Here we go with big agribusiness and our health. So we'll be right back after this short break.
Clear.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening here on Facebook Live. What a show. We're talking about fish. We talked about chicken. We talked about eggs. We talked about prion disease. And we're going to start on the next segment. We're going to talk about dairy. We're going to talk about beef and pork. We hopefully can get through all these things. So there's so many things to talk about.
When you think about the chickens now are all being processed in China. At one point, the farmers were getting slapped with such big fines that it wasn't even worth them to do the processing on their own property. So they put them on a boat, send them out to sea, all the way to China to be processed. Can you imagine what's happening out there?
Yeah, so we need to bring that. We need to bring that up on the live segment, because I want people to understand who's listening to the archives. You don't get to see this Facebook Live feed. Is that chicken and your pork now all is shipped to China. 90% of it shipped to China, processed and brought back. It's a disaster.
Right, and they're not in air-conditioned conditions, eating the best foods. They're just like on their way to be slaughtered anyway. So. They're all thrown in there together. That would be terrible.
Well, as most people say, parts is parts, right? So they don't care. Like the consciousness is lost in the average consumer because we're so far away from where our food comes from. And we only see it like, it only comes packaged. So it's like, okay, here's a hamburger, here's a hot dog, here's some ribs with some barbecue sauce. We don't even see where it's coming from, how it's coming from, what's processed, what's the whole process of that. Yet we do want to know that. We do want to know that where our phones come from or our blue jeans come from. We want to know the whole process. It's very interesting. And we're going to start off with beef next. All right, this is really weird stuff, but this is important. We have to talk about it. That's why we speak the truth.
You are tuned in to Take Back Your Health. To reach our program today, call 1-866-472-5792. That's 1-866-472-5792. Or by email to radio@sanjevani.net. That's radio@sanjevani.net. Now, let's return to Take Back Your Health.
Welcome back, everybody. What a show. We're talking about the food deception in the industry. First, we want to recommend always, again, whole food, plant-based diet, organic, non-GMO, keeping your immune system strong. And one of the things that I do, Maureen does, and what we do with all our patients here is that we recommend Glucan 300 for our patients. It's the strongest natural pure beta-glucan available on the market with all clinical research studies in vitro and in vivo to back it up. Go to purebetaglucan.com. That's purebetaglucan.com and get yourself a bottle. Now, we want to talk about beef. Where's the beef? Remember that commercial in the 80s, right? The little lady picked up, like, where's the beef? I think it was a Wendy's commercial. So interesting thing is,
good question, isn't it?
It's a great question because this is in my book, and I have all this, by the way. Go to ninflammationnation.com, get yourself a signed copy. I'll send one to you today. But there's a pathology journal called the Annals of Diagnostic Pathology, where they took the top 8 fast food restaurants. I'm not going to name them for legal reasons, but it's in the book. You can look at the study. But the golden arches kind of thing, and the kings with the burgers, and the boxes with the jacks, and the bells with the tacos, and all those other kind of things like that. But what they did is they took the top 8 fast food restaurants. They looked at the beef content, like what is in this beef, and whether it's the beef taco or all beef patty. And what it showed that is 2.1 to 14.8% beef average. So what that means, let me explain that in like simple terms. That means
in there.
That means 86% to 98% of the beef in the fast food industry, food that you eat, is not beef.
Wait, well, so what is it?
So GMO corn, GMO soy, soon to be GMO wheat, and all the pink slime and other parts that you don't want to look at. And anybody who doesn't know what pink slime is, Google pink slime, but don't do this before you have your next meal. Remember, we throw all these parts together. It's filler. Think of how do they get an all-beef patty, now a double bacon cheeseburger for under $1. Remember, when the store sells it, they have to still buy from corporate. So that means that they have to still make their margin, pay their salary, their employees, their insurance, their lighting and water and electricity bills and all that stuff, payroll, and their taxes. So if it's $1, they're getting it less than 30 cents. How can you get any food for less than 30 cents? It's not real food. And now we know 2 to 14%. That's it. All right. So one of the things that also makes food really cheap, especially beef, is something called moo glue. And a few years ago, I had a patient come in from New York. She was a professional waitress at a famous Italian steakhouse. And when she came in, I looked at her health history and I go, oh, this is where you work from. She said, I'm moving from New York to Albuquerque. It's a nice place to retire. Oh, you worked at this restaurant. I go, wow, I just saw that on the Food Network. It was one of the top 5 steakhouses in New York. And she's like, yeah, but I would never eat the steaks there. And I'm like, well, why not? She's like, because they use moo glue. And I'm like, what's moo glue? And so I started doing some investigating. And if you read my book, I'll go into that. You can also Google moo glue, and you'll find out. It's a food preservative that comes, it's an enzyme that's derived from the blood of beef or pork. And this enzyme helps break down meat proteins, basically. And so it's a powder. You can get it from $11 up to $200 per pound, even on Amazon, for example. Some of them is kosher certified. I don't know what kind of rabbi is doing this kind of work, but questionable in my opinion, because what they do is the industries then take all the scraps in the restaurant, okay, the tips, the ends, the parts that just cut off, they don't like it. They put it in a pan, they put cellophane, they sprinkle a couple of teaspoons of this moo glue, wrap it, roll it up, throw it in the fridge, wait about 6 hours, and then it glues all the meat proteins together. They take it out of the refrigerator, and then they can slice it up, and now you have nice chops, nice thick steaks.
Prime rib.
So when you look at all these things like, all you can eat steak and shrimp, $7.99 at these buffet places, it ain't one piece of meat. It's just all the parts that anybody else can't use. We just glue them together.
And you know what? They do this with cheese. So those cheese wheels that you buy for your parties that have the different types of cheese all put together there, like the white cheese and the yellow cheese, those are glued together with moo glue.
Wow. So again, one more reason. And also people are like, oh, Dr. Pa, I eat grass-fed, but you need to look for grass-fed finished, right? Otherwise, they just feed the animals a short period of time, and then they corn feed it the rest, and you're paying more for this quote-unquote grass-fed. And again, 97% of all factory food or animal protein in America is factory farmed. So everybody is kind of falsely believing that, oh, everything is grass-fed. It's not. Now, two aspects you got to worry about that is that there's also introduction last year into the food supply, into the farming agriculture supply, is GMO grass.
Right. So the cows are eating.
So now I'm getting more grass-fed. Now I'm getting more GMO grass-fed into my beef, hyper-concentrating of that, and now getting that for my wonderful pro-inflammatory food. Remember, grass-fed is still a 4-to-1 ratio. Corn-fed is a 24-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. So yeah, corn-fed, which is 97% of all the foods, 8 times more inflammatory than grass-fed. But grass-fed is still 4-to-1. So if you still have any kind of inflammatory disease, you're eating animal protein, then you don't understand inflammation.
But cows aren't supposed to be eating corn.
Yeah, I know. Well, guess what? The cows eat a vegan diet or vegetarian diet, unfortunately, but we now factory farm them. Okay? Now let's go to when pigs fly. Pork. It's what's for dinner, right? The other white meat that they classified, or thinking that it was, remember, we all try to move towards white meat saying it's going to be healthier, and now we're finding out, well, it's not. Especially chicken's not. But now when we look at the pork, when pigs fly, they do now because everything is being shipped to China. 90% of the pork supply in the United States now is owned and operated by a large conglomerate that's basically Chinese owned. And what they do is they grow the pigs here, and they ship them to China 7,000 miles. They process it in China, and they ship it 7,000 miles back. Why is that? And why is now pork cheaper than any animal protein ever in history? We have chicken in your orange chicken. We have bacon now. We have everything's better with bacon. They say that all the time on TV. They're pushing bacon. It's super cheap. I even saw just today. There's this company that food delivers like animal protein, right? So you can get these grass-fed steaks and some kind of heritage pork or something, whatever that means. But they're like, if you order this, you'll get free bacon for life in your box. Why is this happening, and how can they justify providing free food? Because it's not what you think. Pork is being there's other additives, preservatives, chemicals, things that are making this animal protein not what you think is truly helpful. Remember, the nitrates also have been shown in pork to cause cancer, and even just cooking the bacon itself or any animal protein creates heterocyclic amines, HCAs, which are also causing cancer. So everybody comes to me and says, Dr. Paul, I'm eating nitrate-free bacon. I'm going to go, so you now still have heterocyclic amines. You still don't have any fiber, still have no phytonutrients, and you still have little to no antioxidants. It's pro-inflammatory.
And if you don't cook it properly, then you have something for life called spirochetes.
We'll get into that in another show with the microbiome. And one thing in my book, it's one of the feedback I get from most of my patients who read it. Most people read it. It's like, the comments about the Las Vegas buffet is just very interesting because you are what you eat. So there's a large production in Las Vegas, one of the largest cities that have the largest food waste per day. Right? 40% of people just throw away their food, right? They eat something to throw away. Go to all-you-can-eat buffet, right? That's what you do when you go to Las Vegas. It's really, get a $30, $40 buffet, and we try a little bit of this, a little steak, lobster, some shrimp, some chicken, and we have our pies and desserts, and we eat it, throw it away. What they do is they take all that food waste. It's actually picked up by a company. And so they just have people pick out the forks and the knives, right, and the plates. Everything else, from desserts to the drinks to the nasty foods, and everything is half eaten, half spit out, everything like that. It goes into a truck. The trucks take it to the farm. The farm actually boils it like a big soup. They feed it to the pigs. It all concentrates in the pig's meat, and then those pigs are sent to slaughter, and then that the bacon and the ham is served on the Vegas buffets.
Ooh.
So this nasty cyclic thing that people like this, but I'm like, no, you're getting all these. Remember, this is not what it traditionally was, and this is why food is more dangerous now than it ever has been. So be careful of the the bacon now because it is not very safe. And then so we have to be careful of when we start looking at all these animal proteins, because this also starts slipping into the plants, right? So what about like French fries? How are French fries? So keep your eyes on the fries was our there's a slogan,
Hamburger.
right? The hamburger way back then. And we used to think, unfortunately, a lot of people who go plant-based start eating tons of French fries, right? There's bad plant-based, or what we call bad vegan junk food, junkies. They're just eating French fries all day, thinking that they're healthier. No, it's a fried food, number one, high in omega-6 of the highly refined vegetable oils. But the biggest challenge is that potatoes must be organic. They must be organic. Why? Because it is one of the most heavily sprayed chemicals. Now, if you want to know what I'm talking about, I want you to all go to environmentalworkinggroup.org, EWG.org, and look up the shopping list. It's going to have the Dirty Dozen, EWG.org, the Dirty Dozen. It's the top 12 most heavily sprayed foods. And you'll always see that potatoes are on the list. So anytime you eat French fries or a baked potato or have, skilled potatoes, hash browns, whatever it is, you should be eating it organically. Otherwise, people are like, well, I'm eating grass-fed finished beef with my regular baked potato. And then they're just getting as much of these chemicals.
Yeah, and people think because it has a nice thick skin that they're not getting the pesticide. But
absolutely not. In fact, there's a chemical called THBQ, TBHQ, and other chemicals called Monitor, where like places like the McDonald's and stuff like this, they spray these chemicals onto the potato. It takes about 5 days. They have to wait it to off gas. Then they move it to a controlled environment like a warehouse. They have to wait 6 weeks to off gas it even more. What it does is these chemicals are making it so that they don't get the little spots. When you get like freshly cut potatoes, you have spots in there. They look little brown spots. They want it to be like perfectly pristine and white and yellow looking in the bouquet of flowers coming out of this little box, right? So those chemicals have now been shown to link to have problems in your health. And so when you get French fries and other things like that, you definitely want to make sure that they're organic. And in fact, there's a chemical compound called acrylamide. And the acrylamide has actually been linked to cancer, especially a higher risk of ovarian and endometrial cancer. So when we cook French fries or potato chips at high industrial temperatures in industrial cooking, it actually makes this compound. Okay, so we have to be careful that we want to not overcook these things, or it's better if you get organic French fries or organic baked potato and cook it yourself. But when you buy it at a store and it's already industrial heated and processed, we know that again, French fries are being, I think that's the number one second vegetable compared to ketchup, I think, consumed in the American diet. That this high risk, so those people are eating, I only eat French fries, it's a problem. And then lastly, just want to talk about before the break is we want to talk about French fries have also wheat and dairy on it. Okay, so those people have wheat allergies, or I'm gluten-free, I got a gluten problem, or I have a dairy allergy. Guess what? If you look at the ingredients of any French fry at the fast food restaurants, they have wheat and dairy. The wheat is there to make it more crispy. When they fry it in the morning, it stays crispy all day long.
Yeah, not to mention the oils. We have to talk about the oils too.
All right, so when we come back after this short break, everyone, we're going to go on further talking about some more foods. We're going to talk about oils. We're going to talk about maybe some garlic, a little bit of honey, and then we're just going to summarize what today's discussion was about. And again, we'll come back after this break, more to learn about food deception.
Clear.
All right, everybody, what a show. Hopefully this is not too scary, but we want to be honest and truthful. Food should not be killing us. Food should not be, causing cancer. Food should not be causing, inflammation, and food should not be causing suffering to people who work in these industries or for the animals that are in those industries as well. We have to look at all these aspects of consciousness. We have to look at environmental impacts. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit on the follow-up segment. And we want to look at being true to feeding yourself. Food is medicine, and you want to make sure that you're not thinking that medicine is medicine and you're actually getting poison at the end of the day.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about milk.
Oh, we didn't talk about milk.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. So we got to go talk about milk on the follow-up. So we have a shorter minute. So I'm going to cover milk really quickly, everybody, and then we'll go into the honey and the garlic. Hopefully everybody go to sanjevani.net, SANJEVANI.net. Please sign up for our newsletter. We give a lot of interesting information. We have events, and we also have specials, and we have discounts on our products and services and things that we have specials on for holidays and stuff like that. So go to Sanjevani, SANJEVANI.net and sign up. And again, we want to thank our sponsor, Glucan 300. Go to purebetaglucan.com. Find out more about it. Again, this is something that everybody should be taking in addition to vitamin D, in addition to Bosmeric SR, the natural anti-inflammatory that we highly recommend, also clinically studied and patented. Go to Bosmeric SR or Bosmeric, BOSMERIC.com to get you some of that as well. So we're coming back to the show. So here we go with the last segment. Let's talk about milk.
You are tuned in to Take Back Your Health. To reach our program today, call 1-866-472-5792. That's 1-866-472-5792. Or by email to radio@sanjevani.net. That's radio@SANJEVANI.net. Now, let's return to Take Back Your Health.
We're back talking about food deception, chemicals, preservatives, there's horrible things that are in the food, that even healthy foods that people think. I want to start off real quick, so we have a last segment here. I want to cover dairy, because dairy is such a big promoted thing. Dairy does not do the body good. There's no studies really showing conclusively, or even directly or indirectly, that milk does the body good in any shape or form, except for a baby.
Kind of the mustache.
Oh, yeah, except for the mustache and people getting millions of dollars for endorsement. In fact, the higher consumption of dairy, remember, increases your risk for osteoporosis. The top 3 countries, United States having 2 pounds of dairy product per person per day, actually has the highest, one of the highest rates of osteoporosis. And as every country eats less, we can do a bone density test on an 85-year-old woman, and they will have not even osteopenia. So again, all dairy stimulates insulin growth factor. Remember that. So go back to read my book, Inflammation Nation, and I'll talk about that in detail. Read the China study by Colin Campbell. There's tons of research out there, but you can even go to PubMed and look up insulin growth factor and animal protein. But dairy stimulates insulin growth factor, one of the strongest promoters of cancer growth when cancer's in the body. So it doesn't cause, it's not an initiator. Dairy does not cause cancer. However, when cancer's in the body, it's one of the biggest growth factors of promotion. Remember, cancer has 10 times more of these insulin receptors, and dairy stimulates insulin growth factor. Remember, it takes this calf, and it's its mother's milk, not our mother's milk. It rapidly grows up to 2,500 pounds, and then it consumes grass the rest of its life, right? Our mother's milk, when we breastfed from our mom, or if you're a mother out there, you're breastfeeding your child, your breast milk stimulates insulin growth factor in your child, because what you're trying to do is you can breastfeed your child up to age 4. Okay, so it's a growth factor. Unfortunately, cancer has these cells, more receptors, and it likes to take it and go with it and grow. Dairy has pesticides, it has hormones, it has antibiotics. So we also see studies now showing that adolescents who consume dairy have 300% more acne than those who don't. We now know
type, right?
Oh, cystic type and all this stuff, right? And then what do? We give them antibiotics, by the way, which then the compound, this disrupts their microbiome. The other thing that we see is that there's studies now, really nice done, where they show that when they give a glass of milk to an adolescent girl, they see that actually will start to grow a little bit more than their normal height for those who don't drink the same amount. And that small amount, which is less than a centimeter, it's of growth, over that period of time when they're going through the puberty, actually now increases their risk of breast cancer. So again, another aspect of that. Finally, when you look at milk, you want to make sure you don't want to be drinking it all after the age of 4, because you lose the enzyme, lactase dehydrogenase enzyme. So when people think, I have lactase intolerance, I go, no, you're just older than the age of 4. Right? So you don't want to be having goat's milk, camel milk, sheep milk, cow's milk. Doesn't matter whether it's raw. Doesn't matter if it's Faye, whatever they're talking about. It's Greek. It's something like that. You don't need the kefir. You don't need to get probiotics from the dairy. And lastly, dairy has actually been shown to have pus in the milk, right? So we know that a few years ago, though, the dairy industry lobbied Congress to increase the normal levels. Remember, they milk this cow over and over. The cow gets
24/7. They have
24/7. So 10 out of the 12 months, including 7 months of the 9-month pregnancy, it's being milked. It burdens the cow, and then after about 2 years, they're sent to become hamburgers. So the typical cow basically doesn't make it to the 4th birthday. But by this aspect of constant milking, they get mastitis. So there's a little bit of pus in the milk. So the lobbies came in from the dairy industry and increased the amount that's available in milk. So instead of lowering it, saying, hey, this is going to make us potentially sick, it's disgusting, it's gross, it's infection, what they've done is the industry said, let's make something called a chug, or let's make flavored milks, and let's make things for your muscles to grow. And now we can give to adults and children and everybody because it's a throwaway protein, even the whey protein drinks, again, and then they're adding chemicals, corn syrup, all these other things, sugars, fructose, all this stuff. And unfortunately, it is not healthy for you. So dairy does not do the body good on any level. And lastly, we want to kind of talk about, oils, because oils, there's a big shift because there's so much fried food now, right? Buffets, all you can eat, fast food industries. And there's been something in China what they call gutter oil. And this is kind of
China. Everything is fried in oil. Yes. And they've run out of oil, basically.
Right. So what they do is they call gutter oil. There's actually a special police task force in China to actually investigate and stop this crime from happening. But there's organized groups that actually go to the gutters, open up the gutters, and they scoop out. We all have gutter drains in restaurants. They actually scoop it up, and they actually take it, reprocess it, refine it, and then they sell it back to the industry as cheap oil. Yeah. So when people go to all-you-can-eat buffet, it's got 100 items, and most of it's fried. And again, $7.99, $4.99, all-you-can-eat, blah blah blah. You got to be careful of where they get the oil because that's an expense, right? They got to fry, they got to dump it out over a period of time. This is now all reconstituted waste of other chemicals. So all that's really reconcentrating all these poisons, all these chemicals, all these toxins, antibiotics, hormones, other things that you don't want to know. So gutter oils is a big problem. So you want to make sure that your oil is organic, and you want to go as lowest oil as possible. Eat less oil. You don't need to douse everything in oil, and especially with olive oil, once you start heating it starts to smoke, you're already oxidizing it, right? So try to go low oil. It's better to eat the foods that actually oil come from. Now, there's a recent documentary that came on Netflix. It's called Rotten. I recommend that's Rotten on Netflix. And they talked about two industries aside of the other industries. One was honey and one was garlic. And honey was interesting because honey is just like olive oil. There's a huge industry. Actually, it's a multi-conglomerate industry where most of the honey that comes to the United States is adulterated. It's super cheap, blended with corn oils and other vegetable oils.
And high fructose corn syrup.
High fructose corn syrup, which is super cheap.
Tastes like honey.
Tastes like honey, looks like honey. They can flavor it like honey. Most of it comes from China. And since China has been now blocked and banned from doing this because they were doing it so often, that all this now goes to these large companies. They ship it to a third country that we do have no trade restriction. It's relabeled and then reshipped country of origin to the United States. But when you go to the store, you remember when you buy organic, say raw unfiltered honey, just for a small like 12-ounce jar, 16-ounce jar, it can be like anywhere from $10 to $16 for real quality honey.
Even more.
And even more
now,
and now you can go get at the big box store, you get these big bear honeys, $2.99, just like the maple syrup. It's like a a cabin or the Lady Jemima that's there. So these are all high corn syrup products, just like olive oil. Right? Olive oil used to be very, very expensive. Now you can go to any store in America and get organic, virgin, cold-pressed olive oil for like $3.
Yeah, watch out for that cute little bear.
So the honey is adulterated. So you really want to look at getting more local honey if you do eat honey. And again, you'll have to pay a price for it because in order to get the nutritional benefits or any kind of health benefits, it's got to be real. And unfortunately, most of it is not real.
What about garlic?
Garlic, there's a controversy in the report, but there was some accusation that was alleging that one of the largest garlic manufacturers here in the United States that was claiming U.S. grown was actually getting their source of garlic coming from China. And then some of it might have been, they had some video, it's kind of questionable, but the video is showing that it might even be using China prison labor for actually processing and breaking the garlic and packing the garlic. Again, we're trying to support as many things made in the USA as possible.
You can tell the difference too. You can tell what comes from China and what comes from the U.S. The good garlic that comes from the U.S. that's locally grown has a little sprout that comes out of it, the little green sprout. The garlic that comes from China it's like perfectly perfectly round. There's no roots on it. There's no sprout on it. You can't, it looks
Yeah,
too
usually these are already come in the jar. They're already like kind of, they've kind of shelled them off.
those two, yeah.
So it's easy, like people can take out. They don't want to break the shell off of it and the normal outer covering. And it's like I can just chop it and cook it in my food. Again, so what a great show this has been. I want to thank our sponsor, Glucan 300. Go to purebetaglucan.com to get yourself some of those. And I want to just make sure everybody who's listening to this show, please refer someone to the website here at voiceamerica.com or go to sanjevani.net. This is a really important information, and we think that we want you to share it. So I want everybody, as a favor to us, we want to start increasing our numbers worldwide. Please share and recommend someone else to come back and listen to the show. And go back and listen to any of the archives from January, the beginning of the year. It's on demand. It's on iTunes. You can get a Voice America app, or you can listen to it on your phone.
Share those with your friends so that they can hear those.
World of information. And again, for those who want more detailed information, go to aninflammationnation.com, get a copy of the book. Again, Pure Beta Glucan, Boss America SR for the anti-inflammatories. Eat a whole food plant-based diet. And in the next couple of shows, we're going to have some really interesting guests coming to talk about data, more things that you can take back your health. Maureen, any last words for the audience?
If you buy an Inflammation Nation and you go to the back section, you'll see all the references. So all of the things we're talking about is factual, comes from studies, research. It's all there.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
You're clear.
All right, everybody. We're on Facebook Live. I think we can just talk for a few minutes, Maureen, if you want to just chit-chat to our listeners. Again, thanking everybody for tuning in. Please post this on your feed and share it with other people because, again, we're not trying to attack anybody. We're trying to get people healthier, right? You can't afford to get sick in America.
Right. And it would be great if you're having friends to dinner and conversation begins about foods and you have this information and a lot of times they go, that's not real. But they can certainly go back and listen to the archives.
Right, listen to the archives. And more importantly, when we look at people who are trying to eat clean, this is a big trend. Everybody's like, I'm eating clean, I'm eating grass-fed, I'm getting pasture raised, I'm getting wild caught. But truly, are they? One of the things that I didn't cover in the show is that even when we see this foodborne illness occur, is because not only just how we're giving antibiotics and how we're mislabeling and all the things I mentioned before, but when they grow these animals, they don't process them. So the organic farmer who may do a little bit more humane aspect of feeding them right stuff and doing the right stuff, even the butcher or whatever you want to call them, or the farmer, they have to send that animal to central processing plants. Right. The guy that's growing the chicken is not a chicken processor. They're not the meat processor. That all has to be shipped somewhere, and it's a central processing unit, which is the big conglomerates that are also doing all the factory farm, the chemicals and the hormones. So your little farmer, your little butcher who you think is doing such a well job that is that once their product leaves their facility or their farm, it then gets contaminated with chemicals and hormones and toxins on the factory farm line.
Oh, can we talk about just for a minute all of the things, the outbreak of E. coli and Salmonella?
Oh, I totally forgot.
In the vegetables, like the most important thing we wanted to talk about.
We have to bring this up on the next show, but for the people who are listening on Facebook Live. Okay, so just recently, a few months ago, they had this big romaine lettuce scare, right? They said, oh my God, there's E. coli.
No, there's Salmonella in the romaine lettuce, right?
Yeah, Salmonella or E. coli, whichever.
How does romaine lettuce get Salmonella?
Right. So vegetables don't have Salmonella. Vegetables don't get E. coli, right? E. coli and Salmonella comes from the animals. Okay, so it comes from the internal of the gut. So that's why chicken, number one cause of Salmonella poisoning, and or eggs, and then we look at chicken with Campylobacter and stuff like that. Now we look at E. coli coming from the inside of a human or the inside of the pig or the cow. Unfortunately, these are factory farms that are above the vegetable farm. So as they slaughter these animals inappropriately in this factory farm fashion, and it's going so fast, right? That's why this contamination of E. coli is everywhere. That's why they say you got to cook everything unfortunately, all the way to kill it. But unfortunately, everybody likes everything medium rare in America and almost raw. I didn't even talk about the hot dogs yet. We may have to do a second show on this, maybe. Maybe we'll do part 2 because there's so much to talk about. So the vegetables get contaminated, and obviously we're not washing the vegetables appropriately, and we get sick. But it's not getting sick because of something inherent in the vegetables.
It comes from the animals.
It comes from the factory farm.
They have these gigantic pools of urine and waste and blood and everything. And who knows if they just let that out and it flows down into the fields where you're growing your beautiful.
Yeah, usually they have them in pools, and they usually have these like sprayers, and they kind of spray fields. But remember, that's all runoff with rain and drainage. And then, again, the farmer who's trying to do the right thing, growing some vegetables, gets their whole crops contaminated. And then there's a scare. They have to recall everything, and then no one's eating those vegetables for a whole season.
Right. And then that's great marketing for the animal industry because, gosh, don't eat your vegetables.
Right. Now, remember, everybody, that all animal protein has zero fiber, right? So beef, chicken, pork, dairy, eggs, lamb, fish, 0 fiber. For every 5 grams of fiber, you decrease your cancer mortality 18%. Right?
And 0 phytonutrients.
So you need to get to 35 to 40 grams of fiber. There is no phytonutrients, like Maureen said. It's phyto meaning plant nutrients. So remember, there's no animal protein that prevents or reverses diseases or even treats a disease. So if someone has heart disease or cancer or colitis or prostate cancer or brain tumor or asthma or allergy or depression or you name the disease, there's no study showing that animal protein will reverse that.
No.
Okay, and in fact, I was looking at a study. It was funny. It was talking about the beef industry put out a study saying, well, eating beef lowers your cholesterol. We should have a part 2 for the show, I think.
Yeah, this is a good one, though.
And what they say is that, they took 2 groups, and they said one group had about 12% saturated fat, standard American diet, and the other one had, they said, only eat lean beef, but you got to eliminate fish, chicken, pork, shrimp, dairy, all that. And so, of course, when you remove all animal protein and only have one animal protein, then the one animal protein is going to have definitely less cholesterol because it's only one rather than, say, the 5 different animal sources the person was eating. So they said there was a reduction in cholesterol. And then they published a study, and then they promoted it. So they always say, eating lean beef now reduces your cholesterol.
That is deception, folks.
Which is deception. And like Michael Grieger, which is great because Michael Grieger says this, which is his quote. So I don't want to be saying it's my quote, but it's like saying, okay, Pepsi has 16 ounces of 16 teaspoons of sugar per bottle, and Coca-Cola has 15, right?
Teaspoons or tablespoons?
Teaspoons. Okay. So this is per soft drink, and so it's saying like that Coca-Cola is better than Pepsi because it's 1 teaspoon sugar, but we forget it's still 15 teaspoons per serving, right? So it's this false argument that what are we comparing it to? If we were comparing it to a whole foods plant-based diet, or there's no comparison.
Yeah.
Right. But again, I'm really going to be. I think we should cover part 2.
Yeah, and then in part 2 we'll talk about plastic foods.
Plastic food. Oh, so many things to talk about. My God, there's just an amazing amount. And remember, because this is not just, our listeners are now from the United States. We're getting people from Canada. We're getting people from, Curacao. We get people from Saudi Arabia. We get people from, even a person from Guyana. So hello, everybody who's listening from Guyana, which is great. China, and again, we're not blaming people, we're blaming the industries because these industries are also feeding the people in those countries these foods. So it's not like everybody's trying to be sneaky. They're just, agribusiness is trying to make more money, and the only way to make more money is giving you less and, to make it cheaper. That's just how it runs.
Right. And, India used to eat all of these foods that were very healthy for them, and now they're importing our foods so that they can have the same diseases we do, especially diabetes, heart disease.
Yeah. So let's save this discussion for next week, because I think we'll have a part 2, food deception sequel 2, because this is important. And I want to recap. I was covering a lot of things very quickly today, but I just realized there's just too much information for anybody to listen to in one show. Hopefully you did find this entertaining, educational, empowering, looking at where you're getting your food. Food can be medicine. Food can also be poison. Remember, 1 out of 3 women in the United States will get cancer. 1 out of 2 will have cancer in men. And, heart disease, every 20 seconds, someone's having a heart attack, right? These are, strokes, and this is not what should be happening, not only in the U.S., but worldwide. And the only way to change this around is empowering yourself by making better choices and being free of what the industry, the food industry, the social media marketing is telling you, eat keto, eat paleo, eat this, eat that, for whose benefit but themselves, by selling you more products, more illness, more drugs and surgery, and more treatment. Our goal is to be free of that and be healthy.
And thank you to all of our friends who are here every week. Ula, thank you so much.
Yeah, everybody who's listening on Facebook, thank you for this. And again, if you can share this on your feed, we want to start boosting so that more people can get this information. And again, just start the discussion about taking back your health. Until next week, Maureen and I will say signing off and best of health.
Adios.
Thank you.
Thanks.